Have you ever wanted to paint your front door? I have wanted to paint my front door since we moved in this house 6 years ago. I've never painted a front door before, and I had this dream of getting that like high, glossy, fancy front door look. I've been thinking for a long time about color, and I finally went ahead and did it without removing the door from the hinges, which is something I am allergic to. So I'm just going to share with you this fun project in case you're thinking of doing it yourself, tell you what kind of paint I used, and all that good stuff. Let's get into it. At the beginning of this year, I can't believe it's already July, but at the beginning of this year, I made a list of many projects I wanted to get done, and I finally settled on my main one for this year being Operation First Impressions, meaning my front porch, my landscaping out front, my front door situations. This is how the front door has looked ever since we moved in. It's very old and beat up paint. It's this cool like vestibule glass kind of box that at some point they inserted here in the front hallway. And it's got these neat little panels, and the whole thing is, I suppose, very Victorian. The doors are coffin doors. I am told you can open both of them wide if you need to push a coffin in or out, or you can just use one on a regular basis. I wanted to paint this as like a quick pick-me-up project to sort of cheer things up around here, and I did not want to take the door off of its hinges, definitely not. I've gotten really adept at keeping doors on their hinges and painting very carefully around the hinges and cleaning the hinges while everything is in place, because in an old house, or maybe any house, once you take the door off, it never goes back on the way that it never hangs the way it did before, and it just is a big old disaster nightmare. So I know that's best practices, but for me, best practices is keeping these doors in place. The first thing I did here was take these ugly weather strip kick plate things that the former owner had nailed to the bottom in some sort of vain attempt to stop the airflow. They did not do anything except look hideous as far as I can tell. And they were nailed on there pretty good, and they left some nail marks. So I had to take all that off and spackle the holes. Then I washed the doors with a solution of TSP and water, to get all of the gooey stuff and sticky stuff and dirt off, so they would take the paint really, really well. It's just a half a cup of TSP and 2 gallons of water, and that was enough to do both doors on both sides. And then after that, I rinsed it with a bucket of clear water, and it didn't take a lot of time, and it's so important and so worth it to get your surface like prepped for the paint. The prep work can be kind of torturous, I find, because you just want to get to the part where it's pretty, but it's so important to set yourself up well by, spackling the nail holes and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. So much of painting is just prepping the surface. This part of the hallway is really dim, and it's really hard to see, especially if you're doing something like painting. So I got out these lights that I sometimes use when I'm filming videos, and they were the perfect amount of light for me to see, to get the door really, really clean, top to bottom. Saw things on the door that I had never seen before. I'm calling this Operation First Impressions because we love to entertain, and I just want people to feel good as soon as they get out of their car and they're walking up to our house. And it is a fixer-upper, and we've been working so much on the inside that the outside has been really neglected. So just starting with this front door and front hallway, at least I'm getting closer to the outside of the house. It's really important to me to have this like good first impression. I know I always love seeing beautiful front doors or wreaths on people's doors. I really admire that kind of thing. I know for me it helps me feel relaxed and like I'm going to enjoy myself if I walk into someone's house and it just looks fresh and clean and inviting and welcoming. And for a long time I felt like mine just looks grubby and like it really needs a coat of paint and it's kind of tired. And I just want to change the whole feel of certainly my outside landscaping, which I'm working on too, and front porch, and also the inside. So I hope that we can take this journey together over the next few months as I continue to work on my hallway. But it's amazing how much work goes into every little thing. It's just incredible. So since I am not taking off the doors and I'm not taking off the hardware and boiling it in an old crock pot or any of these things that are just really hard to do, I besides washing the doors with TSP, I polished all of the hardware on the doors, like the little brass locks and the brass knobs, and I've gotten pretty adept with painting around this kind of stuff, and I can keep a really nice, neat, straight line. And then if I do drip on it a little bit, I keep a damp cloth handy while I'm painting, and I just wipe it off right away. And that is how I keep my hinges and things. Before I did my final rinse with clear water after I washed with TSP, I sanded the doors with 60 grit sandpaper and then with 100 or 150 grit sandpaper. Now, don't get me wrong, I do hate sanding, but this was such a tiny area and I really wanted the finish to go on really, really smoothly and look as good as possible. So I went the extra mile. I wouldn't probably do this on like all the yards and yards of trim that I have to do maybe, but for the doors I felt like it was worth it. So I did go ahead and just lightly sanded. There's not lead paint on these doors in case you were wondering, so I wasn't sanding off anything like that. And I just slightly sanded and then I rinsed with clear water. Finally, I was ready to start priming. I got this mid-tones wood primer from Farrow&Ball, which is what they recommended for the Verdigris color that I'm using for the top coat. And I love these little, I think they're 750 milliliter cans because they're really easy to shake. So you don't have to use a paint stirrer. I don't have a paint shaker or anything, but if you have a can this small, you can shake it up really good. And that is just as good as mixing it with a stir stick, I think. So this primer is kind of, they call it mid-tones, and it's like this putty color. And here I learned something about myself. Usually I have gone for dark and bold saturated colors ever since we've been painting in this house. And now this was just the primer. It was this mid-tone color. You can see it behind me here. But I really liked the color, like the putty color. I thought it was really pretty and subtle and kind of like Martha Stewart-esque. And it got me thinking maybe my time of saturated colors is coming to an end. And I did promise my husband and kids that I wouldn't paint anything else green for a long time after this because we have painted so many things green, and before that it was so many things warm blue. So anyway, yeah, their mid-tones primer, it's got me thinking more about warm neutrals and how subtle and sophisticated they might be going forward as we do the rest of the house. After 2 coats of primer, it was the moment of truth, and I opened the can of Verdigris full gloss paint and I started painting. It is a bright, cheerful green. They call it kind of a coppery green it has some, according to their website, and I think it's true, it's a bright, cheerful, simple color, but then it also has a lot of interesting depth once you start looking at it. So I had to paint, all in all, about 4.5 coats, even with 2 coats of primer to get all the coverage that I needed. But this one can was more than enough to do both of my doors. Here's what they looked like after 1 coat of the Verdigris. Miss Mustard Seed says that in every project there's a moment where you're like, oh, this is so ugly, I hate it, what have I done? And this was definitely mine. My husband came home and he was like, oh, I thought that was gonna be darker. And I was really tired and I was just like, oh, well, if you don't like it, I'm just going to stop painting and we can get a different color. And then we had dinner and I calmed down and relaxed. And I said, okay, I'm going to complete the project. And if we still don't like it after that, then we'll just get another color and I'll paint over it. But I am going to finish it. So I went back and I sanded with fine grit sandpaper in between my first and second coat of this full gloss paint, just to make it shiny and smooth as glass. And also the first time through, this full gloss, it does handle more like an oil paint, if you're familiar with that. They're a little harder to handle, and what I mean by harder to handle is it's harder to control the drips, and they don't level on their own. You have to really brush it smooth. And so as I have painted lots of panels, and when you paint a panel, you always want to start like in the middle and work out, and that way you can brush out all your excess onto the flat part of the door. But even doing that, I had a couple mishaps, so it was really good to go back and sand and just get everything glass smooth. And then after I sanded, I just wiped everything down with a damp cloth, and then it was time for the second coat. Once I got into the second coat, I cheered up a lot, and I could see that I was going to like it after all, and my ugly phase started to fade into the background, because it was the beautiful verdigris color that I had been dreaming of, and of which I am so fond. All these blue greens and green blues. I think I read somewhere that they are the most popular colors in the world, and I can see why. And I guess, all these beautiful greens, if you look outside, we're surrounded by beautiful blue greens. Every tree and bush is either like a more yellowy green or a bluer green or a grayer green. And something I love about this particular verdigris is it looks really nice with my lavender plants outside. It's there's something about the kind of purpley, grayish, silvery green of those plants that looks really well with this verdigris color, and also the rosemary as well, which makes me think of the south of France. I've never been to the south of France, but I think the phrase south of France is like the most romantic, attractive phrase in the English language, maybe. And I love to pretend that I live in the south of France, not really live there, but I really enjoy and love that style of decor. I have a bunch of Pierre de decorating books that from the 80s and 90s, where they went to the south of France and they put together these two gorgeous books about the Provençal style. And a lot of the doors down there were painted these bright colors. So I'm just going with the idea that I am making this door my south of France door, and I've got my south of France lavender, so it's all good. Here is my front door. I have been dreaming about having a shiny, sort of Dutch-looking, old-fashioned front door for a long time, and this is a very beautiful door in its own right, and I'm not quite done with it. I still have to razor the extra paint off of the glass, but I'm not doing it yet because the paint is really not quite dry. This Farrow&Ball high gloss paint, it does take a while to dry. It kind of handles like an oil paint. It's a little harder to handle than your average water-based paint, but nothing crazy. I really enjoyed using it, but it took a lot of coats, I think, because it's such a dark color, and also it's not quite dry yet. It's a little sticky, so I don't want to razor off the paint off the glass until that's done. This color is called Verdigris, and it's supposed to just be a bright, cheerful green. My husband and kids have told me this is the last thing I'm allowed to paint green for a really long time, because I guess I just love green, and all my projects recently have been green, and everyone's getting a little tired of it. But they did agree that they liked the front door. And look at the gloss. I mean, it's just so old school with the little panels, and then makes the knob really pop. So this was a really fun project and I'm glad I did it. And I just shut the door so I could show you. Now I'm gonna get stuck. It's still drying. This is my 4th or 5th day of painting, and right now, let's see, I put a coat on this morning and it's almost dry. It's dry to the touch, except probably if I close the door, but it's very, of course, it's very humid here too in the summer, so the heat is good for drying, the humidity not so good, so I've had fans on it and stuff. I think painting one's front door is a great, quick, fun way to add a layer of old world charm. And I would love to hear what you think in the comments. Have you ever painted your front door? What do you think about not removing hardware and not taking things down? I am all for it. I think there are many creative ways to keep your metal works pristine while you are painting, and I would just love to hear what you think about that, or if you are a proponent of taking doors down and boiling hardware and then putting it all back. What have you done? I hope that you found this inspirational and helpful, and I hope that you decide to paint your own front door soon if you're thinking about it. This was the Farrow&Ball full gloss paint, and I would highly recommend it. It was a joy to work with, and I love the color. It does have a depth and richness, just like they say in the ads, and I look forward to hearing from you all, and I will see you again next week. I hope you're all having a wonderful summer. Bye for now.